Welcome back to the Malt Miller Homebrew channel. Today we are looking at all things fermenters. Now in your fermenter, it's where the magic happens. It's where wort turns into beer. But with so many options on the market at the moment, it can be really difficult to choose which one is right for you and your brewing setup. Stick around, we're going to talk you through it.
That's right, Rob. There are an absolute plethora of different fermenter options available on the market. Things to suit all budgets, things to suit all brewing needs, things that are really geared towards brewing specific styles of beer. But in this video, Rob and I are going to talk you through some of the main categories that kind of fermenters fall into to help you really pick which one is going to be right for you. But before we jump into that, I just want to say, if you are a fan of our channel, please make sure that you subscribe, you hit the bell for notifications. That really does help us out, and give this video a thumbs up.
Now to help us talk through this in the easiest way, we're going to put our fermenters into a couple of different categories.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about plastic fermenters versus stainless steel fermenters, and we're also going to be covering pressure rated fermenters and fermenters that aren't pressure rated. Now there's a bit of crossover between those, and it doesn't quite easily sort of fall into two separate categories. So broadly speaking, we're going to cover plastic and pressure rated, stainless steel and pressure rated. Right, to kick us off, Rob, the trusty plastic bucket, right?
Love it.
It's the beginning of almost every home brewer's journey.
Yeah.
It's affordable, it does the job, and actually with a few kind of clever thought processes and kind of a bit of DIY, this is a perfectly capable fermenter.
Mate, people have been brewing in these since the year dot. They've been making competition-winning beer in a simple plastic bucket. So there are some limitations, and we'll go through that. However, as a starting point, absolutely fantastic. Plus, with our mantra here at the Malt Miller that you only buy something that is going to be useful forever, this is going to be useful forever.
Yeah, you always need a bucket.
Yeah.
Next on the lineup, we're going to be talking and comparing plastic pressure fermenters. Now we have a FermZilla here that is completely tricked out with loads of accessories, and the reason we've got it with all of these wonderful things attached to it is because the one thing that these give you is lots of adaptability. They are relatively affordable in terms of kind of pressure rated fermenters, and you can take advantage of both pressure fermentation, low oxygen brewing. So they're really good at being geared up towards specific styles.
Actually, James, this is set up like this at the moment, not just for this video, but you've literally just emptied Milson.
Yeah, I have. I've literally just kegged a batch of beer out of this, and we'll come on to a bit more about why we feel these are a great point if you want to get into pressure fermentation in a minute.
Next up, James, we are looking at stainless steel conical fermenters. Obviously, we've got a nice dish bottom, made of stainless steel, highly durable, going to last you a lifetime.
Yeah, it's got that kind of professional feel as well, hasn't it? And generally speaking, this kind of size one can fit into things like fermentation chambers, but also because it's stainless steel, you do get the option for additional accessories, again, which we'll come on to in a little bit.
Next, we are looking at stainless steel pressure rated fermenters. That's not on the table because it's massive.
Yeah.
Generally, they tend to be bigger.
Weighty boys.
They're weighty boys, yeah.
And the reason for that is, again, super professional feel, high quality stainless steel throughout. They've got things like jackets on them for cooling, you know, basically infinite adaptability and the option to both ferment, carbonate and serve out of them.
I think what we're actually trying to take the shortcut of saying is they are what you would see in a professional brewery. They're just in a smaller size.
So now you've seen the lineup, we're going to dive into a little bit of a comparison framework, kind of the key categories that you might be considering when you're thinking about what fermenter's right for you, to help you see kind of how each differs. So first up, Rob, we're going to be looking at ease of use and cleaning, right? So kind of the beginning and the end point of the fermenter in its journey of making beer. Starting with a plastic bucket.
It doesn't get much easier than that, does it?
No.
It's a plastic bucket. One of the things with the plastic bucket type fermenters, I would say, obviously you're going to want an airlock on there. with fermenting beer, we need to the CO2 to escape. That's a no-brainer, but also highly desirable is a tap that's high enough so that it's above the trub layer so that we can rack off clear beer.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's minimal components. You know, you've got a tap, a lid, an airlock, and a grommet, and the bucket. So actually, in terms of cleaning, like you said, don't get much easier than that. Now, the stainless steel conical fermenters, depending on which type you go for, they tend to be quite similar. They might have two taps because you might have a racking arm as well as a tap on the bottom for dumping trub and yeast out of. But generally speaking, they're quite easy to clean and disassemble.
Couple of things. They quite often have a two-piece ball valve on there. They can actually come apart, and I would recommend they come apart for cleaning. A couple of spanners, it's an easy job to do. Also, one thing to really take note of, almost all of those stainless steel bucket type fermenters have a lid seal in them. It's really important to remove that lid seal, get it all clean and sanitized before use. And that's one thing that we see people making a mistake on, that they never ever remove that lid seal, and it causes problems.
So a little bit more complex than a plastic bucket, but still fairly easy to take care of. And actually, in terms of ease of use, they're quite similar because, you know, it's lid off, work goes in, cleaning and sanitizing before brew days, easy. Lid comes off, work goes in, yeast goes in, lid goes on, gets either clamped down or sealed up tight, and then quite often, because of the height of them, they'll fit into things like a fermentation chamber, nice and easy. When we move into things like the FermZilla and the stainless steel unitanks, way more components, right?
Way more, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot more disassembly and cleaning, sanitizing and reassembly before brew day. In terms of the ease of use, depending on which model of plastic PET pressure rated fermenter you go for, you can fit most of them into standard size fridges for a fermentation chamber. The stainless steel ones, unless you've got specific stainless steel fermenters and a big larder fridge, you're going to struggle to put them in a fridge.
Yeah, you are. I think that 14 gal is about the biggest non-pressure rated stainless steel fermenter you could get into a commercial style larder fridge.
Yeah, so you are looking potentially at external cooling options there, but as we've said, it opens up more options to do more things. So we just touched a little bit on temperature control there, Rob. Now, all of these can have some form of temperature control applied to them, can't they?
Yeah, for the smaller fermenters, my chosen option, if they fit in a fridge, I would use a fridge because it's super simple. It can be used for other duties around brewing, not just fermenting. It's really handy to have a fridge that you can control the temperature on.
Yeah, and just adding on a Inkbird or one of the wrapped temperature controllers, a heat tube, or a heat pad or a heat mat of some sort, suddenly you've got, for not a lot of money, full temperature control, which will benefit your beer in the long run.
Well, it will. It means that you can brew any style of beer at any point during the year, which is what we would all want.
Yeah. The stainless steel conical fermenters, many of them give you the option to have a chiller coil in the lid, which brings us on to external fermentation temperature control. Now, almost all of the other fermenters, with the exception maybe of the plastic bucket, although you can do it with a plastic bucket, you can put a chiller coil into, or they've got a chilling jacket around the fermenter, certainly on the bigger unitanks, right?
Yeah, they have, James, and obviously then you can take advantage of using a glycol chiller, which once you move into more than one fermenter, a glycol chiller is really, really handy.
Yeah. Now, there is one thing that's really important to note, that when we're starting out, home brewing doesn't always get considered, but certainly as you progress through the hobby, you may well start to consider this, and it's oxygen ingress, both during fermentation and when you're transferring the beer. So with a plastic fermenter, Rob, talk to us about that.
Okay, so actually we are learning more and more all the time about how detrimental oxygen is to finished beer. And I believe that because we are homebrewers brewing on a smaller scale, actually it's easier to get your beer oxygenated and ruined than it is on a bigger scale.
Yeah.
It seems to me on a bigger scale that oxygen can be scrubbed off much easier. I don't know the exact science behind it, but as home brewers, it needs to be right at the top of our list. Now, that doesn't mean to say you need a pressure rated fermenter or you have to ferment under pressure. However, it does mean that it needs to be at the top of your thinking when you're looking at the equipment you're using.
So if we look at the open top fermenters, and I know they've got tops on, but by open top fermenters, I mean like the plastic bucket and the sort of stainless steel conicals where they are not pressure rated, you are going to get a certain amount of oxygen ingress through the seals. Generally though, throughout fermentation, you have CO2 coming out, which negates that. It's when you start to do things like cold crashing where it can actually draw oxygen back in. And equally, when you're transferring from most of those style of fermenters, the temptation is to just run a piece of hose from the tap down to the bottom of a keg and pour the beer in that way. You are limiting oxygen, but you're not excluding it when you do that. So there is a slightly higher chance of oxidizing your finished beer with those style of fermenters if you don't take necessary precautions. With a pressure rated fermenter, generally we're going to be transferring under pressure into a vessel that is also pressure rated, such as a keg. So you are massively limiting the chance of oxidizing your finished beer.
There are also ways of really minimizing trouble when you're using a non-pressure rated plastic bucket type fermenter. Really, if you're wanting to do that, we need to have access to CO2.
Yeah.
We did a video on a mini regulator that works perfectly on a SodaStream bottle, and it's a relatively small outlay for a SodaStream bottle and that regulator. That will give you access to CO2, and I think that should be quite high on priority lists, because it's so good for just flushing spaces that are going to be filled with beer with CO2 first. It makes it way easier and will keep your beer way fresher.
Yeah, even just flushing lines, hoses, adding a little bit of CO2 onto the top of a fermenter before you start the transfer, so you've got that kind of protective cushion almost.
James, I've even gone as far as the grommets in the lids of a plastic fermenter are a perfect fit for 3/8 gas line.
Yeah.
They make a nice tight seal, and you can just add 1 or 2 psi whilst you're transferring from the plastic bucket to the keg, just to replace the beer that's moving through to the bottom of the fermenter, replace that with CO2 rather than air, and it makes a huge difference. Now, obviously, if we're transferring from a non-pressure rated fermenter and we're bottle conditioning, for example, we've got a little bit of wriggle room there as far as oxygen is concerned, because there's going to be re-fermentation taking place in the bottle. That's going to scrub off some oxygen.
Yeah, and things like using crown caps that have got the oxygen scrubbing film on the top of them as well. All of those things can help. Pressure capability is the next thing, and that is a hot topic at the moment. Lots of people are opting for pressure fermenters. It's very simple really, isn't it? You've either got pressure rated fermenters, whether they're plastic or stainless steel, and you've got non-pressure rated fermenters.
I'd like to argue a little bit there, James, because there are stainless steel fermenters on the market that will take 2 or 3 psi's worth of pressure. Okay, so actually they are rated for pressure transfer, but not for fermenting under pressure.
Yeah, and actually
that's a bit of a complication.
Yeah, I mean, we use the Grainfather GF30s here a lot at the malt miller, as well as things like the FermZilla. But those, we have our lovely little transfer kit that means that you can just put CO2 onto the top whilst you're transferring beer. So you are doing what we said, you're replacing that space with carbon dioxide, but you're just helping to push the beer out as well into your keg.
And again, they are not pressure rated, so you do lose some CO2 whilst you're doing it, but hey, we're losing a bit of CO2.
Now with the pressure rated fermenters, it does, as we said earlier, give us the option for pressure fermentation, speeding up lager production, speeding up other kind of beer processes, adding spunding valves so that we can kind of actually carbonate the beer in the tank, so that we're taking advantage of the CO2 that's produced throughout fermentation, and a little bit contrary to what you just said, we're actually saving some CO2 there.
Exactly, yeah.
Right, the next one is kind of that cost versus longevity argument, which is something that kind of we can always go a bit back and forth on. As we said, a plastic bucket fermenter is a great investment to begin with. It will last you, it will be useful, and it is the cheapest option available.
Once we start moving into pressure rated fermenters, the plastic, the PET pressure rated fermenters, you can't beat them for value.
No, you can't. The one thing I would say is, as with everything that is plastic, whether it's a bucket or a PET pressure rated fermenter, you do need to take care with them when you're cleaning them. You know, you don't want to get scratches in them. You don't want to have places where kind of bugs and bacteria can kind of fester and potentially end up spoiling your beer. You also need to be careful when you're cleaning them that you don't use liquids that are too hot, especially on things like the pressure rated PET fermenters, and melt them, or at least compromise their pressure capability.
Yeah, we've actually seen that, haven't we, Penny?
The stainless steel options are going to be more expensive. There's no two ways about it, right? Because you are paying for stainless steel versus plastic. As we've mentioned though, it does last a lifetime. You look after it, it will last you, and it will see you through so many successful brews.
There's a few more aspects than that though, James, isn't there? Because as we showed on the video with the Brew Tools, the FCS, actually using those fermenters, it makes you feel like a commercial brewer. I love that. I love it, feeling I'm doing something really proper here. But also, just having that shiny there with all of the capability that brings, it's a great. This is part of the hobby. You do it how you want. You don't need to have that sort of capability. As we said, you can ferment in a plastic bucket. But as a hobby goes, just having that stainless steel is fantastic.
Yeah, if you are somebody that has the budget to be able to expand into that kind of stuff, it is really cool, and it does give you loads of options, but it doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to make better beer, okay? That's down to you, the home brewer. Yeah. So one question that we get quite often is around kind of batch sizes that can go into these fermenters and what kind of flexibility we've got, Rob.
Yeah, so once we're looking at plastic, either a plastic bucket or the PET fermenters, about 60 litres is the limit. That's about as far as they go up to. Obviously stainless steel, the world's your oyster. You can buy stainless steel fermenters at any point you like. Within our homebrew scale, we're looking at up to 300 litres.
Now, something that you may not have thought about is visibility and monitoring your fermentation. Now, some people absolutely love the FermZilla and the other PET fermenters that are available because they're clear and you can see what's happening inside, and it's mesmerising, isn't it?
It is, but it's fraught with danger because, as I say on every video that we talk about the PET fermenters, beer needs to be dark at all times. So don't use your PET fermenter in your kitchen, all exposed with the lava lamp type thing going on, because it is no good for your beer.
It's nice to have a peak.
Yeah, peak here.
But keep it dark, right? You don't want to skunk the beer, and it's a horrible off flavour. Seriously, just think about that if you are getting one of those fermenters. Now, the other fermenters, they're opaque or they're stainless steel, so you can't see what's going on inside. I don't think that's a bad thing. It's a novelty to be able to see it, but I don't think it's a bad thing that you can't see what's going on inside. In terms of monitoring though, all of these give you options to monitor fermentation, whether that's through easily taking off samples so that you can do hydrometer checks, or indeed adding in a wireless digital hydrometer like the Rat Pill, so that you can monitor what's going on inside. It's worth noting that quite a few of the wireless hydrometers like the Rat Pill, when they're inside a stainless steel tank, it can limit their Wi-Fi capabilities. So just bear that in mind. Think about where your fermenter is going to be located in comparison to where your network is. Maybe think about using the Bluetooth feature on the Rat Pill in association with another device that allows you to daisy chain it, kind of connect to that via Bluetooth, which is a stronger signal, and then that connects to Wi-Fi to give you your data. Now, you were just harping on about this because I know you love it. You love feeling like you're a pro brewer with like a 50,000 hectolitre brewery at your helm whenever you want it. But there is a note about kind of that professional feel and kind of how it does make you feel when you're enjoying the hobby, right?
Yeah, it's a hobby like any other, and you spend your money however you choose to spend your money. But yes, using a what is in effect a commercial grade fermenter is absolutely fantastic. But the capability that it gives you to be able to dial in exact amounts of pressure into your fermenter, know the volume in your fermenter, to be able to monitor both temperature and the gravity of the product inside that's fermenting is absolutely awesome.
It is, but you can do many of those things with other options as well. It just comes down to that feeling that you get and how much control you want, right?
Let's relate it to cars, James. You know, you can do a journey from John O'Groats to Land's End in pretty much any car you like. It'd be really nice to do it in a real swanky roller though, wouldn't it?
Oh, one thing, Rob, to note, we haven't really touched on this, but, you know, cleaning a unitank, yeah?
Yeah, okay, so there is extra work involved in cleaning a unitank when you've got lots of ports.
Yeah, and one thing to note is make sure that you dump all of the pressure that might be inside that tank before you take off any of the fittings.
Yeah, especially on a Friday when you're hoping to finish a little bit early so that you can go and enjoy your weekend and you have a bit of a disaster with a dry hopped beer.
Quick fire summary then of what we've covered. Plastic bucket fermenters, they are cheap, they are affordable, they are lightweight, easy to move around, they're going to last you, right?
And super easy to use, ideal for beginners, but always remember it's going to be handy right throughout your brewing hobby.
But remember, keeping them clean, you need to make sure you focus on not scratching the internal components of them. That is a factor. And also, when you're brewing with them, think about that oxygen ingress, especially when it comes to transferring your beer.
PET pressure fermenters, loads of advantage. We can keep the oxygen out of the fermenting wort and the finished beer. We can also use them as serving vessels, James.
Yeah, and there's loads of accessories available for them, and they are a great way to learn the art of pressure fermentation and low oxygen brewing.
All actually at what is a really low price point for what you're actually achieving.
Couple of things to consider. There is going to be more cleaning, and as with a plastic bucket fermenter, you need to make sure you take care of that primary vessel when you're cleaning it, avoiding scratching the internals. And as we said, be careful when you're cleaning it not to use high temperature liquids. That also relates, Rob, we haven't mentioned, if you are applying an external heat source to manage your fermentation temperature control.
Yeah, it's fine on the plastic buckets. We can use one of those little skinny heat belts, but you can't use those on the PET fermenters. We do heat belts that you can use that we'll link below.
Stainless steel conical fermenters, they are durable, okay? They are gonna get you into that world of stainless steel that's gonna last you a lifetime. Far easier to clean. You can be a little bit more aggressive with your cleaning. You can use maybe harsher chemicals, higher temperatures. You do have the option to add in certain accessories like thermal wells, chiller coils. You can take samples because you'll quite often have a sample valve as well as a dump valve for like getting yeast and hops off the bottom of your beer.
Now you do need to think about how you're going to manage temperature control with these stainless steel fermenters. So check that they fit in your fridge. If they don't, then you're going to be looking at some sort of coil that fits into the fermenter and then probably a glycol chiller.
Yeah, and so there is going to be a slightly higher price point at the initial point of outlay, but it is going to give you longevity.
The pinnacle, James, is the stainless steel unitanks, and especially the glycol jacketed stainless steel unitanks. They really are the pinnacle of home brewing. Now they're a long-term investment, but with that comes a top-end quality with infinite features that we can apply to the unitank to be able to control that fermentation exactly as we want as brewers. Now they do take a little bit of getting to grips with. You have to learn how to use them at their best, and also they take a little bit more cleaning, and they're a bigger, heavier unit to have around the brewery.
Yeah, you need to be thinking about like clean in place options with some of the bigger ones rather than dragging it over to the sink, scrubbing it out, pouring it out, that kind of thing.
Clean in place is going to be absolutely essential, James.
Now I want to just mention a couple of real world examples and to help people think about the kind of beer that they would like to brew and what fermenter might be the right one for them. Now, if you are brewing traditional beers, you know, ales, best bitters, ESBs, stouts, porters, that kind of setup, the stainless steel conical fermenters and the plastic bucket fermenters, they're great for it because you don't need to be thinking about kind of pressure rated fermenters. You don't need to be doing pressure fermentation because that can actually limit some of the flavors that the yeast brings when it's just allowed to express itself and ferment naturally.
James, I think what you're trying to say, and just a shortcut of that, is if you want to get into homebrewing because you like going to the pub and drinking Doom Bar or Old Speckled Hen, you're going to be fine with a plastic bucket fermenter, and that's where you want to start.
If, however, you want to be diving into the world of lager production, and I mean really top-end lager production, and big big, juicy, hoppy beers, especially of the New England variety, pressure fermentation is actually a really vital part in that journey, in our experience. Certainly for those big, juicy, hazy boy beers, because you're going to be brewing in a low oxygen environment. Not necessarily under pressure, or not a lot of pressure, but you're going to completely eliminate oxygen getting back into the fermenter, and you're going to be able to do pressure transfers into kegs that are also filled with CO2, so you're not going to oxidize the beer and end up with pond water.
Exactly.
And with lagers, you can speed up your lager production because you can ferment at higher temperatures. We've got loads of videos on that topic. I'll link them above. But that, for me, is where the pressure fermenters kind of really do come into their own.
Even if you want to produce a lager and you don't want to speed up the process, because you've got a pressure rated fermenter, it means that you can keep CO2 pressure on there, which means you can store the lager for much longer without the worry of oxygen ingress.
Well, lager the beer.
Exactly that.
Or is it lager the lager?
Lager the beer. James, we've actually covered a fair amount here, and we hope that this has answered some of the questions that you've got. If not, obviously just tap us up in the comments below.
Yeah, we'll come back to you. We love reading your comments. If there are things that we haven't necessarily covered here, or you've still got questions, we will come back to you. Now, if you made it to the end of the video and you are not already, do subscribe to our channel. We've got videos coming out every week on the topic of home brewing, so you'll be able to stay up to date with everything we're doing here at Malt Miller HQ. Equally, if you want to keep up to date with everything we're doing, follow us on all our socials and sign up to our newsletter. Links down in the description below. Have a great brew.
Cheers.